I'm creating an Arduino powered remote control from scratch. In the previous video, I explained why I'm making this, as well as showcased the PCB design and user interface mockup. In this video, I'll be showcasing the new PCB actually working and the controller's case. The first PCBs were fabricated perfectly. They're from PCBWay, the PCB sponsor of this channel, so I'd expect nothing less. Just because they're fabricated perfectly doesn't mean they're designed perfectly. There were two pretty major problems. The first problem, every pinhole was slightly too small. I was using the default values of KiCad because I assumed that would be fine. It was not. I found out the hard way, it needed to be at least 0.8 millimeters. The default was 0.76. Second problem, the pinholes for the Arduino Mega. It's pretty embarrassing to admit, but I just didn't measure it correctly, which made it basically impossible to insert it into the PCB. Good news is that despite the two issues, I was still able to attach all of the components to the PCB. Instead of soldering the components directly to the board, I soldered female headers instead. This would allow me to easily remove and reuse the components since this would not be the final version of the PCB. You may have noticed there's no rechargeable LiPo anymore. I weighed the pros and cons of having a rechargeable internal battery compared to just using a removable 9-volt and decided the 9-volt was the way to go. With the LiPo being dropped, I had to do some rewiring on the PCB so a 9-volt could directly power it. Then I wrote some code to display all the different inputs so I could see if the components were actually working. And as you can see, it actually worked. I updated the PCB in KiCad and ordered version 2 from PCBWay. About a week later, I had V2 of the PCB, created by the PCB sponsor of this video, PCBWay. PCBWay offers a variety of different services, their main one being PCB fabrication. Every PCB I've gotten from them has been flawless, and this one was no exception. Check them out with the link in the description. The pin-related fixes were successful. Everything fit perfectly. This time, I soldered the components directly to the PCB. The soldering wasn't difficult, but it also wasn't easy. The hardest part by far was soldering the Mega. The longer end of the headers made soldering really hard. Though to be fair, I had a camera tripod in front of my face the entire time, so that definitely didn't help. Soldering took a little over 2 hours, and once it was done, it was time to test. I tried powering it from the 9-volt, which worked. Also, every input worked as expected. The values were properly displaying on the screen, and it was able to control the hexapod. It was time to design and print the case. My plan was to design the case around the fully assembled PCB, so I imported my assembled PCB from real life into Fusion 360 and then got to work. I started with the top and bottom shells. I went for a rounded rectangle kind of shape, figured keeping it simple was best for now. The bottom was pretty easy to make, the only concern was making sure it was tall enough to fit the components and that the PCB fit correctly into it. The top, on the other hand, was a pain. It had to fit over top of every component and align with them as closely as possible. As you can see, this took quite a bit of trial and error, but I eventually got the spacing correct. The 4 push buttons needed caps, but there was no way to actually attach 3D printed caps to the buttons without gluing them, which I wanted to avoid. So my plan was to create a 3D printed spring that the caps would attach to. Also attached to the spring would be some sort of extender so that when the cap was pressed down, the button that's soldered onto the PCB would also be pressed. This took a lot of trial and error. Honestly, I had the right idea from the start. It just took a ton of iterating to get from that idea to something that, actually worked. Version 1 was the first attempt. Literally nothing about this design worked. Version 2, however, was way more promising. I landed on 2 spring spokes, which allowed me to make them wider and thinner. This design always snaps back into place after pressing it down, as opposed to the plastic bending and not returning to place. This version worked really well. There was just one problem. Because the springs were a part of the front case, if one broke, you'd have to reprint the entire front case. V3, the final version, fixed this frankly embarrassing oversight. I separated the spring from the front case. I designed the spring with a friction fit, and it took quite a bit of time to find a balance between too tight and too loose, but I finally found it. I'm super happy with this final design. I hope it's not too difficult to print, but if there are any issues, you only have to reprint the tiny springs, not the entire front case. Next, I needed to make a battery compartment. Fortunately, there was room for the 9-volt to the right of the gyro and behind the NRF chip. It was a tight fit, but not so tight that I felt like the design of the case needed to be changed. I created a 9-volt sized hole in the case, then got to work on the battery door. The door has rails on either side and a clip at the top to lock it in place when the slide is all the way in. This took quite a bit of trial and error to get right, a recurring theme in this video, but what I ended up with works so well. I've opened and closed it at least 100 times by now, and it still works perfectly. The next step was to make the battery actually connect to the PCB when inserted. The easiest way to do this would be to just use the snap connector and call it a day, but I knew it would be really annoying to use since that's exactly what I did with my first controller. The solution was to use battery contact springs, which would be more difficult to get right, but significantly more convenient for the user. After some searching on DigiKey, I found 3 that I thought could work. Since I had no clue what would work, I ordered all 3. While waiting for the springs to arrive, I wanted to see if I could actually get the idea to work, so I created this masterpiece. And after some finagling, I actually got it working. Once the springs arrived, I tested each of them and decided to use the pointy spring. It was the cheapest, fit the 9V best, and was very springy. After iterating quite a bit, I ended up with this design. It works perfectly, and the battery doesn't disconnect even when shaking it. I was ready to print the entire bottom case with the battery compartment included, but I wanted to check one more thing. Did this new spring holder plus springs actually fit with the PCB on top? And it did not. Yes, I could have increased the size of the case to make room, but I decided to go back to the drawing board instead, since the springs were very difficult to attach. This time I tried getting the tab springs to work, since they definitely would fit and could be attached with screws instead of friction. The reason I didn't go with them initially was because of how unspringy they felt during testing. Fortunately, I was completely wrong about the springiness of them. They worked perfectly and didn't collide with the PCB. And it was easy to assemble. So I went ahead and printed the entire bottom case. One tiny oversight though was that there was no way to know which side should be positive and which side should be negative when inserting the battery, but this was easily fixed by just adding some symbols to the battery door. The rotor encoder, potentiometers, and joysticks also needed caps, so I made those next. These were by far the easiest parts to design, although there was a bit of trial and error to make sure the friction fits were just right. And here's what I ended up with. I'm really happy with how they turned out, but if you aren't, they're super easy to swap out with your own designs. The idea for the bumpers was to use these limit switches and add 2 to each side, similar to a PlayStation controller. But by the time I finished everything else, I genuinely didn't think I'd be able to fit the bumpers at all. But while writing the outro script to this video explaining how I wasn't able to do the bumpers, I decided to give them one more shot, and I am so glad I did. I realized that although the space was tight, if I used the same micro switches that I used in the Hexapod, there was barely enough room to fit them without needing to redesign the PCB or increase the size of the case. Okay, so the switches fit, but I still had no idea how to attach the 3D printed bumper buttons to the side of the case. But what if I didn't? What if I attached the bumper buttons directly to the arms of the micro switches? I was so concerned with making a 3D printed springy button for the side, but it's so obvious now. Just use the natural spring of the switch arm. It took quite a bit of trial and error to get a design that didn't interfere with the switch actually switching, but I finally got it. It turns the controller from a box with buttons on the top to something more. It feels like an actual controller now. Other than the subpar ergonomics, I'm really happy with how this turned out, especially since I was actually able to add the bumpers. Next video will be on coding the mockup UI for real, and after that, I'll release a build guide video as well as a kit. In the meantime though, consider joining the Discord server. It's an awesome place to hang out and talk about robotics. I also want to give a massive shout out to community members Supersonic Blue Honda and Mikey Burrs 1981. During my 10-month hiatus, they were able to take the STLs, bill of materials, and PCB design that I had published on the Discord and build fully functional, modified versions of the controller. This is insanely impressive, considering the fact that I did not help in any way. If you want to see these 2 projects, a ton of others, or if you want to post your own, definitely consider joining the Discord server. I'll see you there.